In this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television, a woman dies after falling from a story building in Maitu, that is in Bamenda Northwest region of the country. The cause of her death remains a mystery. We shall be telling you more on that in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on ETV. And head of state for Obia celebrates 31 euros in part today when the country has seen no major improvement in its economic and educational domains. Youth in the country continue to denounce high rate of unemployment, with experts complaining of economic decline. We shall be getting their views in this edition of the 6 p.m. newscast on ETV. Plus, we talk about Christian Cardinal Ntumi and Professor Maurice Campton, all the political bigwigs in the country that are mobilizing efforts to get the remains of former president and head of state in the country, Amadu Aiju, repatriated back to the country. These are headlines, these, those, and more just in a moment. Good evening to you once again, viewers. Welcome to join us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ETV. The remains of a 36-year-old man identified as Zifak Francois were discovered at the entrance of the Yupwe neighborhood here in the economic capital, Douala. Residents have decried rising insecurity in the area as it has become hideouts for men of the underworld. And Befokwa tells us more in the following report.
The body of a commercial motorcycle operator was found near the military soldier monument erected near the entrance to the Yupwe quarter in the Douala 2 subdivision recently. The corpse has been identified as 36-year-old Zifak Francois from Foto in the West region. Though the circumstances surrounding his death have not been officially established, residents of the quarter have voiced their complaint of frequent harassment by Chadian and nationals from the Central African Republic living in the area. The military soldier monument, though a symbol of security, is said to be a point where acts of aggravated theft regularly occur as early as 6 p.m., with men brutally assaulted as well as women.
And in Bamenda Northwest region of the country, as we announced in the headlines, a woman has died after she fell off from the third floor of a story building that was precisely in Maitu, in that part of the country. Family sources disclosed that the victim was mentally deranged. From Bamenda, Fon Kenneth tells us more in the following report.
It was another scene of action again in Bamenda, this time around at the Mile 2 junction, as the population gathered Indian numbers to confirm what could be termed rumor of a lady who fell from the third floor of a 4-story building and died instantly before the arrival of the firefighting brigade and elements of the force on order. According to eyewitnesses, this lady, called Gani Priscilla, was seen few minutes before her death crossing the road time and again in front of that building and was almost knocked down by a vehicle before entering the building, where she went up the third floor and made up her mind to do her last sports, thinking she was going to have a successful landing from this height. On hand was the mother of the deceased, who confirmed that Gani Priscilla is her daughter and had mental disorder. A painful death that shocked passerbys and onlookers at the scene. Equally, the State Council for Mezam and the President of the Court of First Instance Bamenda were present. A tragic death that saw a medical doctor carrying an inspection on the corpse before the conveyance of the corpse. Gani Priscilla hails from Kambe, Dongamantum in the Northwest region.
That is Fon Kenneth in the Northwest region of Cameroon. We stay with you in that part of the country to add that personnel at the Integrated Center in Finge, that is a village in the Tuba subdivision of that part of Cameroon, have complained that lack of equipment is hampering their day-to-day activities. The center has been operating for months with just 2 personnel and also absence of electricity. Let's have the details in the following report.
Despite the upgrading of the health post of Finge village in Tuba subdivision, Mezam Division in the Northwest region by the government to an integrated health center, no sign of development. In the integrated health center with lots of problems faced by the inhabitants of that locality and the 2 health personnel working in that health center, amongst others. Lack of offices, no lab equipment, no pharmacy, no good labor room with local beds, shortage of health personnel, no light, amongst others, as explained by the only trained nurse in that health center.
As you see this baby like this, we use only this bush lamp to conduct the delivery in the labor room. And when the kerosene is even got finished, when the stores are locked, we even use our phones. We use our phones to put on those small touch inside the bone, the phones to conduct this.
A cry which the fount of Finge from Lopti II added his voice by enumerating other difficulties.
As you know, the road leading into Finge, we would like it to be improved upon because when it rains, the road becomes so slippery. Then our school, which was constructed by Madame Chantabia, our children would like to be like the children in big towns too. And so our health post that was recently uplifted to a integrated health center needs basic needs.
Difficulties of residents of Finge, that is in the Tuba subdivision of the Northwest region of the country, back here in the economic capital Douala, who are those responsible for the frequent circulation difficulties into the eastern gateway to the city of Douala. Commuters are still seeking answers to the said preoccupation. But Pamela Ndukong in the following report tells us that security officials and truck drivers are to blame. Her report.
Truck drivers passing through the Dibamba weighing station, situated at the eastern gateway into Douala, have for long complaints of delays. Some of them say they spend many hours with others, even passing the night while waiting for their documents and vehicles to be checked and weighed, usually leaving the station congested with vehicles. The drivers have blamed this delay on the laziness on the part of the officials of the station. They also say most of the officials are corrupt, reason why most of them stay there very long. On their part, officials of the Dibamba weighing station say the drivers are usually the cause of the traffic and delay because of their indisciplined attitude. Belibeli Nathaniel, chief of the station, says some drivers who arrived after others usually force them to check their vehicles before those were already parked. The road leading in and out of the station can also be blamed for this congestion due to its poor state. Truck drivers have proposed the construction of another weighing station to reduce this congestion and delay at the Dibamba weighing station.
Now, Head of State Paul Biya celebrates 31 years in power today, when some youths here in the economic capital Douala have blamed the high rate of unemployment and poor living conditions on corrupt officials in the New Deal government. They were reacting today on the occasion of Biya's 30 years in power, as I earlier indicated, an era which they lived. For Hansen Chanji went speaking to some youths here in the city of Douala and compiled the following report.
Unemployment, poverty, poor living conditions have driven most youth to seek for job opportunities in government and private institutions. As unemployment skyrockets daily, youth in the era of the New Deal government who struggle to better their living conditions say the cankerworm of corruption has eaten deep into some officials. Most of the youth we met said they have had no benefit during this era of the New Deal government because the rich always try to get richer and the poor get poorer.
I've gained nothing because all the ed certificate I have, I don't even have a job. But those who don't even have anything, they are there working. Those who gain from him and those who are working with him.
This is what happens in almost all public offices when entrance examinations for recruitment into public services are launched. Potential candidates running behind officials. According to this applicant, Paul Biya's collaborators are corrupt and should be swept away. She doesn't appreciate the fact that to obtain a single form for entrance examinations becomes a nightmare.
We go up, they will say go down, go up, we go up, sit down, after they will be go out, as if you are not Cameroonians. Government send concours, they say you have to do concours. Now we want to do the concours, there is no chance. Look at how they are teaching us. Now maybe they will say they are selling fish or that.
The youth say this era of stunted development, unemployment, corruption and embezzlement have made Cameroon to instead move 31 years backward.
Cameroonians are talking about 31 years of unemployment when economic experts still here in the economic capital Douala are talking about economic crisis and of course declined. They are saying that the present economic stagnation in Cameroon can be blamed on the 20 years of economic crisis and of corruption as well in the country. Economic and taxation experts Dr. Pierre Alaka met a review of the economic situation in the country. He was speaking to a reporter for Hansen Chanji.
It is 31 years after the ascension to power of Paul Biya as president of Cameroon. 31 years have gone by and Cameroon's economy remains stagnant. Economic expert Pierre Alaka attributes it to 20 years of chronic economic crisis that hit the nation. There have been 20 years of economic crisis. This has made the environment unfavorable for economic growth. Salary cuts, poverty, poor health characterize this period. Our economic expert also says though Paul Biya in his New Deal government talked of rigor, moralization, integrity and liberalization, the government has also failed to achieve its goals due to corruption and embezzlement. To him, the country cannot be developed with corrupt officials who spent their time embezzling state funds. 11 years of corruption and 20 years of economic crisis has greatly affected the socio-economic and political advancement of the country. Dr. Pierre Alaka says for the New Deal government to succeed in its economic endeavors, embezzlers should pay more than what they steal, which he calls it a principle of steal and pay. The economic expert also says because Cameroon has no currency of its own and keeps on signing commercial accords rather than improving on industrialization, the country will see no economic light if things doesn't change.
And an NGO in the center region of Cameroon is bracing to mobilize resources and support for the repatriation of the mortal remains of former President Amadou Ahidjo from Senegal to Cameroon. A press conference was held yesterday in the center region of Cameroon to that respect, and another has been announced for next February 7, 2014. Let's have the details of the report with Yaoundé-based correspondent Roland Akon.
At the Yaoundé press briefing on the repatriation of the corpse of former President Ahidjo and other national heroes who died in exile, Alain Fogué and Abubakar Ousmane Mey said their objective seeks to heal the wounds of history and to think about Cameroon again. If not, they questioned, how will the nation show gratitude to grateful men of our grateful fatherland? They announced a conference on the matter February 7 in Garoua, the hometown of former President Ahidjo. Guest speakers at the conference include, among others, Christian Cardinal Toumi, Professor Maurice Kamto of the CRM party, Adamu Damjoya of the CDU party, Ben Muna of the APF, and Dr. Ounangini, political scientist. Cameroon's rebirth passes through the rehabilitation of major political figures who died in exile. It's one of the main themes of the conference. In an interview over France 24 in 2007, President Biya said the repatriation of Ahidjo's corpse depends on the family. Germaine Ahidjo, wife of the former president, disclosed in an interview in an African magazine that the repatriation of Ahidjo's corpse should not be secretive. Former President Emile Deline Zinzou of Benin is also pleading for the repatriation of the corpse of Ahidjo. Ahidjo died November 30, 1989 in Dakar, Senegal, where he is buried. He was condemned before his death for taking part in the 1984 abortive coup d'etat in Cameroon.
And still here in the economic capital Douala, the commission that was charged to regularize or regulate the activities of clandestine churches in the city met today, and they have 1 month to check the authorization, location, and also the activities of alleged illegal churches in the city of Douala. And just how far has the commission that was put in place few months ago gone in its work, as well as its implementation of the rules and regulations that were put in place? Jacques Ekwe-Kinge attempts an answer.
Authorities in Wuri divisions have decided to intensify their fight against the activities of illegal churches. The different sub-commissions, which will be headed by the divisional officer of the different subdivisions, will have to check if these churches are operating legally, check the activities of the churches, and if they are not a nuisance to the well-being of the inhabitants, and also check the qualification of the coordinators. The activities of these churches has been criticized of lately. The activities which range from loud noises, setting of confusion in households, inhuman practices, which usually leads to death.
If it is established what we heard from those complaints, then it's too bad and good enough. The commission is there now to call into order, because it's a peaceful approach to call it into order those practices. But as we said, we heard some names of some funny names that are not really churches. They might be sects, as we earlier said. There are some people who disguise themselves to do many things since they know.
The third assistant senior divisional officer for Wuri, Besinga Eli Etone, has cautioned the different commissions to meticulously carry out their job, and has also promised severe administrative sanctions to defaulters. The commission is also made up of administrative authorities, forces of law and order, and church leaders.
God's way, the authority working together with church to see that everything comes into order. Those things will not exist anymore. That one is very sure. And I think the authority has given instruction on what to do. And if it does not work, they will close them. It's simple. We are not against the fact that they should close or they should not close. Our problem was that they should not mix up, because they are genuine servants of God who are really putting everything to see that their duty is well done and they are participating in
the population hopes to start having peace when the final report of the commissions will be handed to the administration and severe disciplinary sanctions taken against recalcitrant churches.
And that report there by Jacques Ekwe-Kinge brings us to the end of this segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. 6th November 1982, 6th November 2013. That was the exact date that Head of State Paul Biya was sworn into office as President of the Republic of Cameroon. Tonight, we are going to be having an educationist and also a journalist to take a look back at some of the educational policies as well as the economic policies of Head of State after 31 years in power. Good evening to you, Mr. Samuel Ngube, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Good evening, Mimi, and thank you for inviting me once more.
And tonight as well, we are going to be having Mr. Chia Swebu. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
It's a pleasure being here for another time, Mimi.
We should be thank you for coming, and so we are going to begin right away with the report that was filed in by for Hansen Chanji. We saw youths scrambling, youths with qualified certificates scrambling to get jobs in public offices in the wake of launching of concourse. What was your immediate reaction when you see youths that are qualified? They have received training in school, seeking for jobs, and they are not sure whether they are going to get those jobs they are looking for. What's your immediate reaction as an educationist?
Mimi, I think it's really a pity for the young Cameroonians who are seeking to enter into a job sector in our own country. And it's really also a pity to see that their requirements are not really getting into their own expectations. But one thing that as an educationist I used to ask myself is to ask, or is to demand whether these youths are really qualified for the jobs that they're looking for. Because it's in the years past back, as I said last time in this panel, Cameroonians were mostly trained to enter, or mostly educated to enter public service. Nowadays, things have changed, and we have a greater population of those young Cameroonians who maybe are looking for access into public service or access into other enterprises to get any job or to pick a job elsewhere. We are really pity about the situation that is happening, because most of them have been relying on public service, and they're not looking into how the education that maybe they've collected from schools can help them one way or the other. And that is why you see the majority of the young Cameroonians, whenever a concours is announced or whenever a hitch is being given about any entrance in the public service, they are in a majority in number. So it is a pity, and the government can really take the whole population, which has been grabbing since 1992.
And the rate of unemployment in the country is increasing on a yearly basis. And to you, Mr. Tria, do you think that it is at the level of education or the training that these students they get in school that is the problem of unemployment in Cameroon?
Yeah, thank you very much. You talk about unemployment in Cameroon, but I will first of all note that we have a problem in Cameroon in between education, experience, and common sense. Being intelligent is a problem in Cameroon, but having the common sense to go to the professional field is another problem. Yeah. So, as at now, Cameroonians youth that are graduating and are unable to get jobs within the country, they are facing a problem of common sense. And most of them, when they go to school, they believe they have to finish and work for international institute like multinational institute. If they don't work for multinational institute, they will either work for the government, which is not true. There are many other companies down there that are in need of these Cameroonians. But there is a problem of common sense. Even when these small and medium-sized enterprises happens to bring them into the field, they are unable to show their capacity of working. So it is a problem, because when you go to school, it is not just to work for the government. There are many other sectors that provide jobs in Cameroon.
Exactly. But so the problem is that when these youths get to those private sectors, they cannot really deliver the goods.
Yeah, so we can see the problem in two sides.
Mr. Samuel Ngube, don't you think that the problem is at the level of the educational reform in Cameroon? Does it not require reviewing the entire educational system in the country?
I think that is really the real problem with me. It's just because the youths are not understanding.
Is it the youths that are not understanding?
The youths are not understanding. Yeah, the youths are not understanding, because this is since 1992 that the public service concours or entrances have been closed up. Most of them have been closed up for the youths. So the youths would have understood that the possibility of integrating the public service is not more granted to anybody else in Cameroon. So they would have been under. Even in education, if I want maybe to divert on one side, the system of education of nowadays prepares the young Cameroonians to have access not only in the public service but for auto employment, that they can employ themselves. And this is what the government, or maybe each and every educationist, has been trying to instruct young Cameroonians. It is not only the public service where you can get better, but you can use the knowledge that has been that you acquire from school. You can use the knowledge that you acquire from school, the knowledge that you receive from school, to integrate into the active life society. And this is quite all right. It is not only in our country, this is all over in the world. We see what is happening in Europe. We see what is happening in most developed countries. The problem in our own countries is, or in particular in Cameroon today, is that the youths are not understanding that the possibility of integrating the public service is already over. The knowledge that we give students in school, that knowledge should be able to make them integrate the public or the active life, and those are the objectives that even the
Mr. Tria, something that Mr. Samuel Ngube is telling me, that the possibility of youths getting employed into public service is over.
It is over indeed.
Is that not a problem?
Yeah, it isn't any problem. It is over indeed because if everybody has to work for others, who will create and who will work for who?
Exactly.
So it should be.
What is the role of the government?
Yeah, let me tell you, the government hasn't done anything to bring solutions to this problem. It should be noted that in 2005, the International Monetary Fund canceled the debt of Cameroon, canceled about $255 million. The debt that Cameroon was owing to the International Monetary Fund. So giving opportunities for the government to invest in terms in infrastructures, in public amenities like education, health, and so on. But so far, the government hasn't done anything. And there is also a problem of census in Cameroon. You can see that in 1994, the government of Cameroon, the population of Cameroon was estimated at 15 million inhabitants with a budget, with an estimated budget of 400 billion. But in 2013, we are talking of a population of 20 million inhabitants, and our budget is above 3,000 billions. Yeah. And the rate of poverty has instead increased. The system...
So where does the problem lie?
The problem is the government. The problem is not only the government, but the problem is our youth that believes it is only the government that can provide jobs. They should be able to create jobs for themselves.
So how do youths create now the jobs for themselves?
We have professional schools that we have professional schools that the government put in place since 2000 and since the year 2000, and so far it is more than 10 years. The government cannot do everything, because if the government has to employ everybody, the small and medium-sized enterprises will no longer exist in Cameroon. And the small and medium-sized enterprises are the cornerstone of our economy. So something should be done at the level of our youth.
Mr. Samuel Ngube, the 2035 status of an emerging country that Cameroon envisages to attain requires new educational options for job creation and also decent employment in the country. Do you see this coming up in the nearest future?
If really we follow the system, closely, I think the objectives that the government has put in place in most of our schools nowadays will permit the students of tomorrow to integrate themselves into the social life or into the daily life activity. And that is why we educationists, or we proprietors of some schools or private schools in the country, we're trying to make sure that the students we educating today should not be on the line of those of yesterday. They should understand, as my colleague on the other side was saying, they should understand that today is I have to be educated not only to integrate the public service, but to try to get the knowledge that I've received from school to develop something for myself. And I think, with that one, I think we're going to be an emerged country in the millennium coming ahead. But if we still remain into the standard of the system that we educate because we have to pick up a job elsewhere in any enterprise or in any company or in the public service, I think the youth might still be facing the same difficulties. So what I might advise the youth today is that the knowledge that is being given to them in our own institutions, whether it should be professional or academic or any schools, that it should be, the youth should understand that the knowledge being acquired is the knowledge that is going to integrate them into the active life society.
So to you, Mr. Atria, youth should stop depending on the government?
Yeah, the government is not the solution, like I said some couples of minutes ago.
Do you mean that the government has failed?
The government has failed indeed, because in 1993 you can see that the salary of civil servant was reduced with 65%, and the government thought it was a solution to the economy, but it opens room to public embezzlement, misappropriation of public funds, and so on. So far you can see we are unable to have a good educational system.
So where are we heading to when youths cannot depend on
2035 is a nightmare. Yeah, 2035 is a nightmare. Vision 2035 is a nightmare in Cameroon. So many reforms, economic and social reforms, should be done. So this is part of the solution. So if we keep on looking ahead to achieve something in 2025, I should tell you that it is a nightmare. Like
well, when we look at the level of the literacy rate in the country and compare it to other countries, it is practically two different situations. Thank you so much, Mr. Chiasoyo, for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
It was a pleasure.
To you, Mr. Samuel Ngobe, thank you as well. We'll probably have time to talk more on this in a subsequent edition.
It's a very important issue. I think if we create time for that, it's going to be good.
Of course, and to our viewers, we thank you so much for having joined us. Wishing you a blessed stay in the company of our programs. Good evening to you all.